doesn't love a good fishing story? To hear something that is seemingly so impossible it's hard to fathom, to wonder the immensity of it, to wish you were the one of that story. That's a really good fishing story. Today we have just that, a really good fishing story. A fishing story that when I was talking about it with Jeff, Jackson commented, "That's a lot of fish!" And it was. 153 fish. That's an incredible amount of fish. 153 in one net that didn't break or even tear as it was brought to the boat and then to the shore. 153. How is that even possible? Because I know I've never caught 153 before, at least not in one fell swoop. I've caught quite a few before and had some pretty amazing catches though, if I do say so myself. There was a time years ago, and I can't remember if I've told you the story or not, so I'm just going to tell it again. When Jeff and I were fishing at Fish Lake in Southern Oregon in our canoe, we hadn't had much luck all day when I had a bite on my line. As I began reeling it in, I realized it was no longer there. The fish had gotten away. Thinking that was the end of it, a moment later, a fish jumped into the air and landed in the bottom of our canoe. I'm not exaggerating. Jeff and I stared at each other in disbelief. Then I grabbed the fish, he opened the cooler, I threw it in, he shut the lid, and we sat there just staring at each other, wondering what just happened. We had never had a fish jump in our boat before, and never have since. There was also the time we were fishing at Odell Lake, which is nowhere near the town of Odell, early in the morning for kokanee, which is a landlocked salmon the size of a trout, using downriggers. Now the trick with the downrigger, for those who aren't aware, is a weight takes your line straight down in the water to your desired depth. When you get a bite on the line, the fishing pole needs to be popped off of that weight line. Well, I did this when I noticed I had a bite and then started to reel. The problem was it felt like the line had not popped off because there was so much weight pulling the line and the pole down. So I kept trying to pop it off as I was reeling, having no luck. So I thought. Pretty soon I reached the end of the line, and there on the end was a lake trout, not a kokanee. A lake trout is 2 times the size of a kokanee, 30 inches versus 12 inches, and not meant to be brought in on the thin fishing line that we were using. Somehow though, with my jerking of the line and thinking I was still caught with that weight on, the fish stayed on the line and we got it right into the net as my line snapped. It was unbelievable, because catching a lake trout at Odell Lake is not a very common occurrence, especially when that's not what you're fishing for. Granted, it wasn't 153 fish, however, it was a pretty big catch for me. And so it was for the disciples, who caught 153 fish, because Jesus instructed them to throw their net on the right side of the boat. And then they had breakfast with Jesus. All after Jesus had been resurrected. This was the resurrected Jesus they were talking, eating, and being present with. This was an experience they were never going to forget. That in itself is a really good fishing story. To have Jesus come back for a 3rd time, to hang with the disciples before leaving for good, to learn more from him before he moved on, like how to fish. Or maybe not how to fish, but where to fish. And not meaning on the right side of the boat, but when to try something new. So when it isn't working on one side of the boat, try the other side. When one way is not the option that is sought, try another option. Don't give up. Don't think it's over. Give it another go with a new approach, a new strategy. Keep hope that there is another way and then move in that direction. Continue to push forward as opposed to getting discouraged and abandoning it all. Jesus taught this huge concept with one simple instruction: to cast their net on the right side of the boat. There was no long, drawn-out explanation for why, or a theory that needed to be told. It was action-oriented. Do this and see what happens. That's some pretty good advice for the disciples and for us too. Try something new when we are stuck. Have hope. Take action. Believe there's another way. That's an important path to follow. What's great was Jesus' advice didn't stop there. He had more to share, more to teach. This time, it was directed at Simon Peter. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my lambs. And then it went on a second time, Tend my sheep. And a third time, Feed my sheep. All with the same question being asked by Jesus to Simon Peter about loving him. By the third time, though, Simon Peter was a little hurt and annoyed. Why was Jesus asking the same question over and over again? Didn't he believe him? What was the problem here? What point was Jesus trying to make? Feed and tend lambs and sheep. Figuratively speaking, of course. Don't only feed and tend lambs and sheep. Feed and tend the people of the earth. Be present for them. Make a difference. Feed and tend to the earth and all of creation. Be present for it all. Make a difference. Do as Jesus did for those around in whatever way possible. Take this message seriously. Listen to it. Apply it. Enact it in your life. Follow me, as Jesus instructed at the end of his conversation with Simon Peter. Follow me by tending and feeding. That's a pretty big deal too. The resurrected Jesus giving more life-changing advice to the disciples who needed it because they had returned to their life of fishing, not doing the follow me part that Jesus had already told them to do. That was why this conversation needed to be had again, and why Jesus made this important point as they sat together on that beach eating fish and bread for breakfast. The disciples needed to return to the path they were called to be on. This makes sense because it's easy to make a wrong turn, to go back to old habits, to forget the direction to be traveled, or simply to get hung up with something new and exciting. Reminders are needed and welcomed. Even if they seem insulting or confusing at the time, they matter. Especially when they consist of care and concern for others, when there is well-being at stake, and when health is a part of the picture. Or as Reverend David Luce writes, we all need a sense of purpose, the belief that what we do matters, that if we did not show up, people would notice. Purpose, it turns out, is one of the great motivators in the world. More powerful than money or fame or power. Believing that you have something of value to contribute draws us again and again into challenging circumstances with joy. Purpose was given to Simon Peter. Purpose was given to the disciples. Purpose is given to us too. It's about taking that purpose seriously and doing something with it. Knowing we have a responsibility to affect change and to do it on a regular basis. Now, this responsibility and this purpose are to be applied throughout all of life. in many different ways and in many different avenues. It is not something we check off of our list one day and know that we are done. No. It is to be maintained always. That was why Jesus kept coming back to the disciples, to remind them of this fact. Now it's our turn for the reminder, and time to look at one possible application for it. The aspect of the overall concept of the environment. Humanity, animals, plants, water, land, air, everything that makes up creation. Those are the lambs and sheep we are to tend and feed. That is where we are to focus our attention. At least that's our direction today. For beginning today and the next 4 weeks leading up to Pentecost on June 9th, when we celebrate the gift of the Holy Spirit, we are going to focus on God's creation and our role in it. We are going to apply today's concept and others to how to demonstrate our care and concern for what is around us. We are going to see that we have a purpose to make changes, to realize the impact we have, both positive and negative, and to understand the reasoning for it all. We are to give thanks for the beauty that is around us, and to know that it is up to us to maintain and preserve it. This is our responsibility, to take action, to follow in ways that are meaningful and lasting, to cast our net on the right side of the boat if the left side is not working. For as the Lorax in Dr. Seuss says, which he has some profound wisdom, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. That's true and pretty insightful. For we are to care a whole awful lot. We are to see our role. We are to know we have a purpose. And we are to acknowledge it comes from Jesus in his instruction to Simon Peter and the disciples. His words are not going to go away anytime soon, if ever. They are what we need to hear, to repeat, and to follow, even when it's difficult, even when it seems like an uphill battle, even when we think we are the only ones. We are to keep at it and know one day, it will make a difference. Will you pray with me? God, thank you that we are able to tend and feed your lambs and sheep. Amen.